I never thought I'd walk into our childhood home and feel as if I'd been punched in the gut. The hallway was silent when I arrived, the sun filtering through half-drawn curtains, dust motes floating like tiny ghosts in the still air. My siblings, Marcus and Isla, had insisted I come by to take care of some paperwork, but I'd instinctively known something was off. As I stepped inside, my heart thudded against my ribs. The living room looked almost unchanged. The faded floral sofa where I used to curl up to read, the old oak coffee table sheathed in protective glass my father had commissioned years ago, and the paintings, my paintings, once proudly displayed, lining every wall. Except they weren't there anymore. Empty frames, halos of nail holes, and my shock-stunned gaze were the only remnants of a lifetime's worth of memories. My art collection, decades of work I'd poured my soul into, had been erased from these walls as if I'd never existed. My breath caught. "Mom said you'd want to see for yourself before we sorted it all out," Marcus said, his voice tight. He stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine. Isla hovered near him, pale and trembling, like she wanted to run but wasn't sure where to go. "Sorted it all out?" I repeated, forcing the words past the lump in my throat. "You sold them? You sold my paintings?" Marcus swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. They were just collecting dust. The gallery right down the street offered a lot of money. He pulled out his phone, tapping the screen nervously. "But it's okay. We used the funds to sponsor an exhibition, to honor your work." My legs nearly buckled. "Honor my work? You stole it," my voice cracked, "and sold it behind my back." The room spun. Isla's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, sis. We thought you'd be glad it was out there, in a proper exhibition. The gallery will feature you as a rising star." I closed my eyes, recalling the nights I'd spent shaping those canvases, bleeding emotion onto every corner, urging color to speak louder than words. Each piece was a diary page, a confession, a battle won or lost. They were mine. "You didn't ask me," I whispered. "You didn't even tell me." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You've been busy with that residency abroad, we thought." He never once thought to call me, to ask my permission. And now, those canvases, my stories, hung in some high-ceilinged gallery, signed with names I couldn't recognize, priced and displayed like commodities. I left without another word. The echo of my footsteps down the hall felt like a betrayal. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles blanched. I stared out at the early evening sky, trying to collect the fragments of my dignity. Over the next few hours, fury built in me, first a slow burn, then a roaring inferno. This was not over. Not by a long shot. I retraced my steps to the gallery the next day. The place was a sleek, modern space, its name etched in polished steel above the entrance. Artemis and Company. Fine Arts. Through the large glass windows, I saw my paintings mounted on pristine white walls, spotlights illuminating each brushstroke. People milled about, murmuring, snapping photos, nodding appreciatively. Collectors jotting notes on iPads, speculating on value. I could feel my blood freezing. A slender man with an Armani suit approached, extending his hand. "You must be Ms. Hawthorne. We've been expecting your arrival at the opening reception." "I'm Julian Clark, the curator. Your work has drawn a lot of attention." "Ms. Hawthorne?" I echoed, eyes narrowing as I shook his hand. "You got the wrong person. I'm Lydia Marrows. These paintings belong to me." He blinked, a subtle stutter in his smile. "Lydia Marrows. But the contract bears the signature of Lydia Marrows." It felt like walking into a trap, a crime scene where the detective had your fingerprints planted everywhere. I spent the next hour tangled in legalese, contracts, and the gallery's airtight defense. My signature had been procured legitimately, they claimed, via a representative. They showed a PDF, time-stamped, a document I never saw. When I stormed out, alarms went off in my head. This was no longer just about anger. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Back in my small studio apartment that night, I spread out every piece of evidence I could find. Emails, contracts, photographs, and bills. I made calls to art lawyers, to my old art school mentor, and to the journalists I'd once thought were friends. I needed allies. In the dim light of my drafting table, I discovered an overlooked detail in the contract. Exhibition sponsorship provided by Marble & Company. Management. Marble & Company was Marcus's company. He'd orchestrated the sale. I allowed myself a grim smile. That meant they'd be further entangled in this scandal if I exposed them. My phone buzzed. A message from Isla. "I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do." I typed back, "Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., and come alone." I needed the truth, not their justifications. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, mind racing, heart pounding. I felt the old familiar spark, the drive that had made me pour every ounce of myself into my art. I was not a victim. I was a creator, a storyteller, and I would have my story told on my terms. Tomorrow, I would confront Isla and uncover everything. And then, well, they would learn that taking from Ameros was never a risk worth taking. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The morning light seeped through the blinds of the little cafe where I waited, golden streaks slicing across the table. The steam from my untouched latte curled in the air. I checked my phone. 9:57 a.m. Isla would be here any minute. My mind replayed last night's discovery, Marcus's signature, the forged contract, the gallery's lies. But this wasn't just about Marcus. Isla had been complicit, perhaps even collateral. I needed to know what drove her to stand on the sidelines while our legacy was sold out from under me. A bell chimed as the door opened. I looked up. Isla stood framed in the doorway, her face pale, eyes red-rimmed. She looked smaller than I remembered, and the weight of regret etched every line of her posture. She slid into the seat opposite me, hands curling around a cup of tea. Her lips trembled. "You look well," I said softly, trying to quell the anger I felt rising. She shook her head. "Not well, Lyd. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." Her voice cracked. I folded my arms. "Then explain it to me. Why did you let him do it? Why didn't you come to me?" Her hands shook. "I thought you'd be glad. I thought finally you'd get the recognition you deserve. You've been cooped up in that tiny studio in Paris for months, sending pictures of finished pieces but never seeing them on proper walls. When Marcus suggested the exhibition, I let myself believe it was for the best." "At what cost?" I pressed, my chest tightening. "You betrayed me, my life's work." My words felt harsh, but I needed honesty. Isla's gaze dropped. "He said he would handle everything legally. He showed me the paperwork, some contract he had printed. I didn't read it closely. I should have. I'm sorry." Her apology hung in the air like a fragile shard. "You think sorry is enough? You think those canvases, those strokes of color, can be undone with an apology?" Tears slipped free down her cheeks. I know. I'm so sorry. I was scared of him too, Lydia. Marcus, he's always been the smoother talker in the family. I didn't want to cross him." She shook her head. "I never hated you, never wanted to hurt you. I panicked." I laced my fingers together, trying to steady my racing heart. This was the moment to decide. Do I forgive, or do I battle? But betrayal is a wound that takes more than words to heal. "You'll help me make things right," I said, voice low but firm. "You'll tell me everything, every call he made, every email you sent, every step in that scheme. I need every detail." Her face paled. "I will, but Marcus won't let us go without a fight." I nodded. "I know, that's part of the plan." I slid a manila envelope across the table. "These are copies of the contract, the correspondence with the gallery, and the evidence of Marble & Co.'s involvement. I've already spoken to an art lawyer. He's drafting a lawsuit." Her eyes widened. "A lawsuit? Lydia, be careful. Marcus has money. He won't back down." I offered a small, determined smile. Locking horns with him was never part of the plan. But I have something he doesn't, the truth. And the truth will set me free, and it will expose him. Isla swallowed, the tremor in her hands betraying her fear. "I'll cooperate. But please, promise me you'll be safe." I reached across and squeezed her hand. I will, and I promise, once this is over, I'll make sure you're protected. She nodded, relief mixing with lingering guilt in her eyes. The cafe door jingled as someone entered, drawing my attention. Through the window, I recognized the silhouette before I saw his face. It was Marcus. Tall, impeccably dressed, aura of confidence that I'd once admired but now loathed. He scanned the room, spotted us, and headed inside. My pulse pounded. This was it. Confrontation in the open, truth on my side. I rose slowly, feeling the weight of every moment stretched taut between us. Marcus approached, his smile polite but unsettling. Lydia, Isla, fancy seeing you here. His gaze settled on me. I take it you two are discussing my little surprise exhibition? Actually, I paused, letting the silence press against him. We're discussing your breach of trust. His smile faltered, just a fraction. I don't know what you're talking about. Everything was above board. Except you forged my signature, I said, voice steady and loud enough for the other patrons to hear. And you sold my art without permission. A hush fell in the cafe. Marcus's jaw clenched. That's ludicrous. I had full authorization. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Be careful, Lydia. You're in my territory now. I met his gaze. Try me. And then he reached into his blazer pocket. Cliffhanger. Was that a gun or just another twist in a game far more dangerous than I'd imagined? The glint of metal in Marcus's hand froze me mid-step. My pulse lodged in my throat, every breath a silent scream, as the cafe's warm morning haze curdled into something cold and hostile. He held up his hand slowly, the object wrapped in a gleaming black casing. Not a weapon, he said, voice low but mocking. He smiled, a slow, predatory curl of the lips as he pressed a hidden button. The casing snapped open, revealing a small digital recorder. Just proof. Proof of your own admissions. I felt a hot flush of anger. You'd stoop to blackmail? I spat, every muscle coiled. Stooping? Marcus tilted his head. I call it resourceful. You think you have the upper hand with your precious evidence? I have more, much more. Isla gasped beside me. The cafe actually paused. The hum of conversation stilled, a collective breath held. Marcus's gaze flicked around, basking in the sudden tension. Then he leaned forward, eyes blazing. Lydia, I suggest you drop this lawsuit. Walk away quietly. Otherwise, I'll release these recordings to the press. Detail every drunken confession you made about your struggles, your insecurities, your desperate emails begging for exposure. I'll make sure your reputation is destroyed before you can even clear your name. My chest thundered. He had recordings of me, in my darkest moments, trusting family, thinking I could share vulnerabilities. He'd twisted those moments into ammunition. A bead of sweat rolled down Isla's temple. She swallowed, tears glistening. My sister, torn between loyalty to both of us. I forced my shaking hands to my sides. You'd betray our family for this petty scheme? I said, voice trembling with righteous fury. I trusted you. I raised you both, nurtured you when you scraped your knees, celebrated every one of your victories. And you repay me by selling my life's work and then trying to bury me with lies. Marcus's eyes flickered, an emotion I almost felt sorry to see, uncertainty. But it vanished as quickly as it came. Everything I do to protect the Marrow's legacy. He spread his arms. Would you rather the world know what a fragile wreck you can be when the lights go down? My mind raced. How to neutralize this threat? How to fight back when he held so much power? Then a thought sparked, and with it, a plan that glittered brighter than any paint on my canvases. If he wanted to play games, I could play too, but my game would be one he'd never see coming. I inhaled deeply, steadying my voice. All right, Marcus, you want to play blackmail? Let's play. But know this. Every word you record, I've already backed up. And the moment you threatened to destroy me, I sent copies to every major art journalist in Paris, London, and New York. His smile faltered again. Once you release those recordings, I continued, they'll run a story, not about my failures, but about your betrayal, your fraudulent contract, your collusion with that gallery. And do you think anyone will listen to your side of the story after you've proven you can't be trusted? The recorder in his hand wavered. Across the table, Isla's face brightened with hope. Marcus's voice was tight. You'd do that? I already did. His jaw clenched. A bead of sweat glinted on his temple. I rose to my feet, heart pounding with adrenaline and triumph. I suggest you close the gallery, return my paintings, and resign from Marble & Company. Today, or I'll ensure your name is synonymous with scandal in every city my work has reached. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The cafe door chimed as a waiter approached, nervously clearing his throat. Marcus glanced at him, then back at me, eyes narrow and calculating. The waiter stood awkwardly, hands trembling, waiting for an order. Marcus forced a smile. Make that a cappuccino, no sugar. He turned on his heel and strode out, leaving behind an electric hum of stunned silence. I sank back into my seat beside Isla, lungs heaving. Are you okay? She whispered. I nodded, hands still shaking. Yeah, we won this round, but the war's just begun. The cafe erupted in whispering as I collected my things. Outside, the mid-morning sun felt like mercy. I dialed my lawyer's number. It's time to file, I began, voice steady. But then I remembered the recordings, the gallery, the sponsorship link. And one more thing, I said into the phone. I need a press conference in London, tomorrow. Hedge our position internationally. I hung up and turned to Isla. Let's go home. We have a lot to prepare. She smiled weakly, relief and apprehension mingling in her eyes. We walked toward the car, our footsteps echoing like a drumbeat. Each crunch of gravel underfoot was a promise. I would reclaim my art, my story, and I would make sure everyone knew whose name truly belonged on those canvases. I barely slept that night. My mind raced with every possible outcome of tomorrow's press conference. London was calling, a city where art and scandal intertwined in headlines faster than paint dries on a wet canvas. I packed my bags with precision, contracts, backups of every email, high-resolution photographs of my paintings, and a dress that balanced professionalism with the understated elegance I'd cultivated through years in dusty bohemian studios. Isla arrived at my flat before dawn, coffee in hand, her eyes red but determined. We drove to the airport in silence, the weight of what we were about to do pressing on both of us like a storm cloud ready to burst. I reviewed my speech in my mind as we sat in the terminal, the hum of travelers around me, a lullaby of normalcy I could never quite reach. When the flight attendants offered breakfast, I declined. My stomach twisted, but this was more than hunger. It was fear flavored with fierce resolve. On the plane, I rehearsed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Today, I stand before you, not just as an artist, but as someone whose voice was nearly silenced by those I once trusted. My eyes traced the Gothic silhouette of London Heathrow as we landed. The first raindrops splattered the window like tiny crystals. I felt alive. In the Lux Verde Hotel conference room, journalists from The Guardian, BBC, Art Review, and Bloomberg jostled for position. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. They knew a story was coming, they just didn't know how explosive it would be. My lawyer, Mr. Singh, stood by my side. He gave me a reassuring nod. Your evidence is airtight, Ms. Marrows. They can't ignore what we've got. I took a deep breath and approached the podium. The room fell silent in anticipation. Good afternoon, I began, my voice steady. Thank you all for being here. Yesterday, I learned that my paintings, my heart and soul laid bare on canvas, were sold without my consent by the people I trusted most, my siblings. Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras clicked. These paintings were listed under a contract I never signed, a contract that forged my name and stripped me of ownership. My brother, Marcus Marrows, and my sister, Isla Marrows, orchestrated this sale to profit from my work. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Images of my art, bright abstracts of emotion, muted portraits of childhood, landscapes of internal turmoil, flashed on the screen behind me. But their betrayal went beyond theft. When I sought justice, Marcus attempted to blackmail me with private recordings of my vulnerabilities, recordings he claimed would ruin my reputation. Instead, those recordings only reveal his desperation and greed. I have already distributed them to major art publications. The room buzzed. A reporter shouted, "What about Marble & Company?" I clicked the remote. A slide appeared, listing Marble & Co.'s sponsorship links, the forged signatures, and correspondence showing Marcus's direct involvement. Marble & Company will face legal consequences for their role in this fraud, I declared, and my paintings will be returned to me, where they belong. I will not rest until justice is served. Questions rained down. What do you want from your siblings? Will you collaborate with Artemis & Company again? Do you fear retaliation? I answered each with clarity and professionalism, my nerves coalescing into unbreakable determination. After the press conference, the fallout was immediate. Headlines around the world proclaimed "Artist exposes sibling betrayal" and "Marrow's family scandal rocks art world." Social media ignited in support of me, inundating the gallery's pages with demands to return the paintings and remove Marcus from his position. Back in my suite, I sank onto the velvet sofa. Isla joined me, handing me a glass of wine. "You were incredible," she said, voice thick with pride. I sipped slowly. This is just the beginning. The phone rang. It was my lawyer. "Lydia, you need to see this," Mr. Singh said, his tone urgent. He emailed me a link. An online auction had appeared overnight. My painting, Echoes of the Heart, the one I'd thought lost forever, was up for sale again in New York, and the starting bid was much higher than before. I stared at the screen, adrenaline flushing through me. They weren't done. Someone was trying to profit off my art yet again, this time across the Atlantic. I turned to Isla, a grim smile forming. "Pack your bags," I said. "We're going to New York." Cliffhanger. Who was behind the New York auction, and what price would they pay when they discovered whose hands they were dealing with? The roar of the plane's engines rattled through my bones as we descended toward JFK. New York City stretched beneath us like a glittering maze of possibility and peril. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, watching the skyline emerge through the haze. Marcus and Marble & Company had underestimated me. And now whoever was behind this latest auction would learn exactly whom they were dealing with. Isla sat beside me, clutching her jacket over her lap. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. I turned to her, determination blazing in my eyes. "More than ever." We stepped off the plane into a swirl of urgency, taxis honking, travelers weaving, porters shouting. I hailed a black sedan, no time for cabs, and we sped toward Manhattan. On the way, I reviewed the email from Mr. Singh, linked to the auction site, listing details for Echoes of the Heart, scheduled to end in 48 hours at the Mandarin Hotel Ballroom, with private bidding by invitation only. "It's a high-stakes event," I said, glancing at Isla. "They're expecting wealthy collectors and dealers, many with ties to Artemis & Company and Marble & Company. I bet Marcus is behind it, using proxies to launder the sale again." She bit her lip. "But how will we get in? It's invite only." I smiled. "Leave that to me." We arrived at the hotel, its facade shining in the noonday sun. I checked into a temporary suite, one floor below the ballroom, and left Isla to settle. Alone, I slipped into a sleek, tailored suit, jacket over a simple blouse, hair pulled back. I looked every inch the confident artist. Then, a call to my publicist in London. "Send out a press alert. Lydia Marrows will make a surprise appearance at the New York auction tonight. Call it Marrows Manifesto. It'll draw enough attention for me to slip in undercover." She hesitated but complied. Within the hour, news outlets had picked up the tease. Renowned artist Lydia Marrows crashes siblings' illicit auction. I slipped into the ballroom entrance moments before it closed. A handful of guests lingered, sipping champagne and eyeing the painting displayed under dramatic lighting. My work, encased in a gilded frame, its colors pulsing with life even under glass. As I stepped in, cameras flashed. Reporters elbowed forward. Ms. Marrows, any comments on tonight's sale?" I held up a hand, letting the flashes dazzle me. "I'd love to hear more about the auction process," I began, voice amplified by the soft hum of cameras. The bidders turned, startled by my presence. Hostile gazes met me. Wealthy collectors, gallery directors, and, there, near the back, Marcus, leaning against the wall, smirk on his face. He mouthed, "You don't belong here." I lifted my chin. "Actually, I do." Suddenly the lights dimmed, and the auctioneer's gavel landed. Lot 37, Echoes of the Heart, by Lydia Meros. Opening bid, $250,000. The hush was deafening. I stepped forward, crossing the room. "Before you bid another cent," I said, voice strong and clear, "know that this painting was obtained illegally. My siblings forged my signature, and you're all complicit." Gasps echoed. The auctioneer froze, gavel raised. A tense moment stretched. Then a robust man in a tuxedo waved a paddle. I bid $300,000. More bidders followed, the prices climbing. I inhaled, adrenaline crackling. "Friends, I understand the value of this work. After all, it's mine," I said, and the room shifted again. As the bidding war escalated, I felt the old thrill, the pulse of power, paint mixing with emotion. But I had to stay focused. Claiming the painting back wouldn't be enough. I needed to expose the network that trafficked it. I signaled Isla, who slipped toward the stage. In her hand was a confession document Marcus had signed, proof of his involvement, and a clause binding the auction's proceeds back to him. She passed it to the auctioneer quietly. He glanced down, eyebrows rising. "Is this a valid contract?" he asked. Before the auctioneer could act, the banquet doors burst open. Reporters swarmed in, cameras trained on Marcus and me. Security moved to block them, but I raised my voice. "This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe." Now, back to the story. A ripple of laughter and confusion spread, then renewed intensity as phones began live streaming. Under the spotlight, Marcus's face flushed. He tried to interject, but my lawyer strode in, delivering a cease and desist letter to the auctioneer. "These proceedings are null and void," he declared. The auctioneer lowered his gavel, glancing at the document in hand. A murmur ran through the audience. And then the ballroom doors opened again, this time revealing a tall, elegant woman with sharp eyes and a portfolio under her arm. She approached Marcus directly. He paled. Cliffhanger. Who was this mysterious woman, and why did Marcus's confident smirk vanish the moment she stepped into the light? The tall woman's heels clicked on the polished marble, echoing like a metronome through the stunned hush of the ballroom. Her tailored charcoal suit and silver hair gave her an air of unassailable authority. Marcus's confident facade cracked as she closed the distance between us. "Mr. Meros," she said, voice even but with a steel edge, "I believe it's time to settle your debts." His eyes darted from her to the crowd, panic flickering. I felt a surge of triumph pulse through me, but I forced my expression into one of wary curiosity. "And you are?" I asked, stepping forward. She turned her gaze to me, cold, appraising, and extended her hand. "Alexandra Kane, legal counsel for the heirs of Eleanor Prescott." Her grip was firm. Eleanor was the original owner of many works sold through Artemis & Company. It appears some of her estate's pieces have been shuffled into tonight's auction, illegally. A murmur rippled through the guests, collectors checking their catalogs, whispering. Marcus swallowed hard, his lips parting. "That's absurd." "Not at all," Alexandra interrupted, eyes fixed on him. She lifted a tablet, tapping it. Instantly, a list of paintings flashed on the screen. Titles, provenance records, and watermarks only visible under certain wavelengths. Among them, Echoes of the Heart, marked as part of the Prescott estate. "Your forged documents didn't anticipate forensic verification," she said. My heart hammered. The plan had just become exponentially more powerful. Alexandra smiled thinly. "We'll be filing suit by dawn, Mr. Meros, and I trust you'll cooperate fully in returning these pieces to their rightful heirs." Marcus's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The sheen of sweat on his brow caught the overhead lights. The auctioneer slammed his gavel with force. "This sale is canceled! All lots are withdrawn until further notice." Exclamations of shock and anger erupted. Security descended on Marcus, Alexandra, and me, though I was protected by the press swarm photographing every moment. In the chaos, I found Isla's hand. "We did it," I whispered. She nodded, tears of relief in her eyes. As we were ushered out of the ballroom by Alexandra's team, I realized how many players had been involved in this tangled web. Marcus, Mariana and Company, Artemis and Company, Eleanor Prescott's heirs, and now Alexandra Kane, a formidable ally. Outside, the night air was sharp and bright with city lights. Alexandra approached us. "Ms. Marrows, the Prescott estate has offered to ally with you to help fund your next exhibition under proper legal copyright. They want amends, but only if you agree to lend your voice to preserving artist rights." I studied her for a long moment, then offered my hand. "We have a deal." She shook it firmly. "Excellent, we move fast. There's a press release at dawn. Now, are you sure you don't want that painting for your own gallery?" I smiled, exhaustion and exhilaration swirling. "It belongs back in my hands. And my hands alone, but I'll consider your offer." As Alexandra walked away, I realized the layers of betrayal ran deeper than my siblings' greed. They were part of a system built to commodify art at any cost. Tonight, we struck a blow against that system. Isla and I hailed a cab. "What's next?" Isla asked. I looked up at the towering skyline. "Tomorrow, we reclaim Echoes for real. Then, we rebuild, on our terms." She nodded, and we climbed into the taxi. The city lights blurred past as I settled into the seat, mind racing with ideas for the joint Prescott-Marrows exhibition. But beneath it all, one question burned. Who else would come for me, and would I be ready? Cliffhanger. As the cab pulled away, a shadow detached itself from an alleyway, phone in hand. A message was sent, "Operation Marrows is compromised. Code red." I awoke to the first rays of dawn filtering through the curtains, the city's hum barely audible beneath the weight of my thoughts. Last night's events played on a loop in my mind. The auction hall, Marcus's shock, Alexandra's revelation, Isla's tearful relief. Yet beneath the triumph lay an undercurrent of danger. Someone had marked us with a code red. That meant more than betrayal. It meant we were targets. The sweet phone rang. I tensed, reached for it. "Lydia Marrows." "Ms. Marrows, this is Agent Harper with the NYPD Art Crimes Unit. We have reason to believe there's a threat to your safety and the safety of the Prescott pieces. I need you to remain in your suite until we secure your location." His voice was calm but firm. I exchanged a glance with Isla, who sat at the edge of the bed. Understood. He instructed a patrol car to remain outside and promised to send an officer within the hour. After hanging up, I sank against the headboard. Isla perched beside me. "Do you think Marcus arranged this?" I closed my eyes. It could be him, desperate last move. But I also know Artemis and Company had more to lose than anyone, and they're fast. My pulse quickened. We need more protection and answers. The doorbell rang, startling us. Isla jumped. I cautioned, "Wait, don't answer unless it's the police." I opened the peephole. 2 uniformed officers stood guard. I unlocked and opened the door slightly. "Ms. Marrows, Agent Harper sent us," one said. "Mind if we come in to check?" I welcomed them. They swept the suite, dusting for bugs, checking locks. One set up a surveillance camera in the corner. Another took notes on my conversation with Alexandra and the auction. They were thorough, reassuring. When they left, I turned to Isla. "Good, now let's plan our next move, retrieving the painting." We gathered around the coffee table, maps of Manhattan, floor plans of the Mandarin Ballroom, and the contact info for the Prescott Estate storage facility. Alexandra's team had arranged to secure Echoes in a climate-controlled vault in the financial district, awaiting transfer to a charitable foundation. "We have 24 hours before the transfer," I said, tracing a finger along the map. "We'll need to be there when they open. But we have to assume that whoever sent Code Red could strike there too." Isla nodded. "We'll need backup." She tapped my phone. "I called your friend at Art Review, Isabel Vega. She said she'd help. She's going to arrange for a private investigator and some muscle." "Good." "We'll also contact our London allies. This is bigger than just this painting. It's a statement. Your art, your right to control it, is non-negotiable." I met Isla's gaze. "We go in daylight, legal team escorting. No surprises." The rest of the morning blurred into a flurry. Calls to Alexandra confirming the pickup schedule, emails to Isabella Vega coordinating logistics, a quick meeting with my lawyer on the terrace to sign off on escort details. By afternoon, the vault's location had been solidified. A nondescript building on South Street Seaport, guarded but with public access to the lobby. The Prescott team would arrive at 10 a.m. tomorrow, transfer in progress by noon. As I prepared my notes, Isla called my attention to my phone. A group text from Alexandra, meeting in London next week, full press ahead, also look out for unusual activity in the UK. I frowned. The tentacles of this campaign extended far beyond my siblings' greed. There were powerful interests determined to exploit art, and me. Dinner arrived, bland room service fare I barely touched. My hands shook slightly as I sipped water, every instinct on high alert. I lay in bed that night, restless. Shadows shifted on the ceiling. My phone buzzed. A text from Isla. PI says someone scouted the vault today. Unmarked van. Stay safe. Love you. I sat up. No rest for the creative mind? I muttered. I grabbed my laptop and drafted a secure message to Isabel Vega. Need your PI at South Street Seaport at 9:30 a.m. Undercover. No one else. Code, Bluebird. Hitting send, I leaned back, heart pounding. Tomorrow we faced the next battle, but we were ready. Cliffhanger. As I set my phone aside, I noticed a reflection in the dark window. Someone standing across the street, watching. Their phone lit up as they typed a message. She's here. Dawn broke with a pale wash of light that seeped between the shutters. I lay still for a few moments, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the muted creak of the building settling in the morning chill. Across the street, a lone figure huddled in shadow, phone glowing intermittently. They'd texted moments ago. She's here. I swung my legs out of bed and slid on my robe. Isla, already awake, stood by the window. They're still there, she whispered, voice tight. I nodded. They'll back off once the PI takes over. We stay inside until 9:30. She exhaled, stepping away. I didn't sleep well. We'll get through this, I said, though uncertainty gnawed at me. At precisely 9:15, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole, a woman in a plain coat, sunglasses, carrying a discreet satchel. She tapped a code on the doorframe, and I unlocked it. Isabel Vega entered with a brisk nod. Morning, Lydia, she said in a low voice. Your PI and team are setting up at the vault. Good. Anyone following you? I asked. She shook her head. No tails on me. Her eyes flicked to the window. The street watcher's gone. I exhaled. Let's grab breakfast downstairs. We'll go over the plan. We rode the service elevator to the lobby cafe, a small corner spot with wrought iron tables and half-lit Edison bulbs. Over cappuccinos, Isabel outlined the operation. 2 undercover agents inside the vault lobby disguised as art transport crew, 3 on the street monitoring exits, and 2 in plain clothes blending with tourists. The Prescott team would arrive at 10. Then, at 11:30, they'd begin the transfer. At noon, I and Isla would arrive, stage an inspection under the guise of final provenance checks, and legally reclaim the painting. Isabel confirmed there were cameras at the vault doors and in the corridor, but the PI had arranged to hack the feed, looping a static clip from earlier in the day for 10 minutes, long enough to sneak echoes out past the guards. It was elegant, precise, every move calculated, until someone noticed, the building's security guard, a towering former Marine with a hawk-eyed stare, glancing at my face in the photos Isabel had shown him. By the time we left for the vault at 9:50, the street was calm, the watchers had melted away. I activated my phone's secure line and messaged Isla, we're a go. The walk to the vault felt surreal. Seagulls cried overhead, cargo ships drifted in the harbor, and lofty skyscrapers cast long shadows across the cobblestones. My mind raced with every what-if scenario. At 10:02, the Prescott van rolled up. 2 men in crisp gray suits stepped out, carrying a heavy case. The undercover PI emerged from behind a pillar, waving them in. I watched from across the street, pacing a silent vigil. Then the loop kicked in. The cameras showed a static corridor. Isabel tapped my shoulder. They're in, now. I whispered, stay on comms. At 10:15, a van in plain sight rolled up behind the Prescott van. An unmarked Nissan, driver side window down, agent inside. He checked his watch. 10:17. He texted, in position. Inside the vault lobby, the air was cool with the hum of climate control. The case was wheeled onto a platform beside a bank of lockers. The Prescott team entered codes. The door slid open. A sharp click echoed. Farther down the corridor, obscured by reinforced doors. My heart slammed. Then, through the glass, I saw Echoes of the Heart, its swirling reds and muted blues framed under protective plexiglass, resting on a dolly. 2 agents in vests wheeled it toward the exit. Isabel pressed her back against the building's corner. Animate! I and Isla stepped from the taxi at 11:28, dressed in tailored blazers with Marrow's Estate lapel pins. A fedora shadowed my eyes. We approached the glass doors. The Marine Guard watched us. I offered a polite nod. Good morning, we're here to inspect the final handover. He scanned our IDs, Prescott credentialed. He buzzed us in. Inside, the case stood waiting. I reached for the lock mechanism and pulled out the case key. I'd been given a duplicate by the legal team. It fit smoothly. The latch clicked open. I lifted the painting. The security guard inhaled behind us. Ms. Marrows. I met his eyes, carefully composed. Relief, respect, authority. Thank you. Everything's in order. Outside, footsteps and murmurs betrayed the undercover agents converging. A side door clicked open. The Nissan's agent hurried over, hooded pouch in hand. I nodded to him. He extracted a certified transfer document and snapped a photo for the ledger. Then he faded back into the shadows. I turned back to the guard. We'll transport this directly to the new Prescott Marrows exhibit site in Brooklyn. He saluted. Ma'am. Isabel exhaled behind me. They don't suspect a thing. The case was loaded into our awaiting transport van. I climbed in and slid the canvas out, cradling it as if it were a newborn. The glass pane shimmered under the early light. In the van, I gazed at the painting's living colors. Its heartbeat was mine. But victory never feels clean. At 11:45, my secure phone rang. I answered without looking. It was Alexandra, voice urgent. Lydia, are you safe? We've just had intel. The code red came from Artemis and Company, but a second faction has just bounced a large bid on your Prescott show. They have deep pockets. We may have to escalate protection to Scotland Yard level. My breath caught. Understood. I ended the call and looked at Isla. Finders keepers never meant a moment's peace. But it's ours. Our driver ignored the city's chaos as we sped across the Manhattan Bridge. Ahead lay Brooklyn's gritty charm and our new sanctuary, a warehouse-turned-gallery where I'd unveil Echoes of the Heart to the world. Cliffhanger. As the van crossed the bridge, a black SUV mirrored our route. 2 figures inside, faces obscured. One pressed a phone to his ear. They've got it. Move to Plan B. Brooklyn's industrial skyline unfolded outside the gallery's factory-style windows as we pulled up. The converted warehouse gleamed under strings of Edison bulbs, its rough-hewn beams and exposed brick walls softened by draped velvet curtains and gilded signage. The Marrows Prescott exhibit. I pressed my forehead against the glass pane of the van, peering at the scene inside. Guests in cocktail attire mingled near towering plinths bearing other Prescott masterworks. Landscapes, seascapes, and still lifes stolen decades ago, now reunited with rightful heirs. Isla and I stepped out, careful to shelter Echoes of the Heart from view beneath a protective cover. A discreet escort, a team of the Prescott Estate's security, formed a half-circle around us, faces alert. In a satin-draped alcove at the gallery's center, a red velvet rope awaited what would become the centerpiece of the evening. My painting, unveiled at 8 p.m. sharp. As I climbed the steps to the entrance, journalists from Art Review, The New Yorker, and even GQ greeted me, lenses poised. I offered a measured smile and a curt nod. Ms. Marrows, any comments on tonight's exhibit? One inquired. It's more than art to me, I said softly. It's a story of reclamation. Flashing cameras captured the moment. Inside, the crowd buzzed as the first of the Prescott board members approached, a distinguished woman with silver hair and aviator glasses, Alexandra Kane. She intercepted me with a warm hug. "You look radiant," she whispered. "Everything's set. The press release is already circulating. Social media is ablaze. You'll own this moment." "Thank you, Alex," I replied, touching her arm. "Couldn't have done any of this without you." She nodded, eyes crinkling. "Let's make sure tonight is flawless. Should I cue the lights?" I glanced at the crowd, then smiled. "Why don't you introduce me instead?" She raised an eyebrow but grinned. "With pleasure." Time accelerated. By 7:50 p.m., the final attendees filtered in. Art patrons, socialites, bloggers, a handful of high-profile auctioneers sulking on the sidelines. The gallery smelled of polished wood, fresh paint, and a hint of rosewater from the floral arrangements. A hush drifted through the room as Alexandra took the small stage by the velvet rope. She tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this historic evening. When art is stolen, it is not just property that is lost, but the voice of the artist, the echo of the creator's soul. Tonight, we reclaim an icon of that voice." She gestured grandly. With a flourish, she pulled the cover away from echoes of the heart. Gasps rippled, then applause. I stepped forward, voice resonant. "Thank you." When I first saw this painting in a gallery case where it did not belong, I felt as though a piece of my heart had been buried. Tonight, it rises again in its true home, not as a commodity, but as a testament to integrity and the power of truth. The audience clapped, some wiping tears. I scanned their faces. Admiration, wonder, a few muted looks from representatives of Artemis and Company who had not been disinvited despite the risk of scandal. Throughout the evening, toasts were made, champagne flowed, and conversations wove through the crowd. Collectors pledged to donate to a newly established Melrose Prescott Scholarship for emerging artists. Journalists scribbled notes about how "my siblings sold my art collection, then I sponsored their next exhibition. Could be a best-selling memoir." I reveled in the camaraderie for a brief moment, until Alexandra tapped me. "We need to move the painting to the secure wing," she murmured. "I've just heard from the NYPD. That black SUV we spotted in Manhattan has been linked to a private security firm hired by Artemis and Company. They've rented an office across the street from their London headquarters. We might be looking at an international assault on the exhibit tonight." My pulse thudded. "We have to get it somewhere safer." Isla joined us, her face pale but resolute. "There's an underground freight elevator that leads to a separate loading dock. We can move it through there, and straight to the vault we prepared on site." We guided the painting through side corridors as staff dimmed the display lights to avoid drawing attention. The wooden floorboards creaked under the case's wheels. The hall felt colder, echoing with the distant hum of the party. In the dim service hallway, a single door marked "Staff Only" loomed ahead, a barrier to the secured loading area. Alexandra fished a master key from her jacket, and the lock clicked open. Inside, the elevator doors stood like yawning mouths. The freight elevator's metal cage was threaded with steel cables, its interior lit by a single bare bulb. We wheeled the painting inside, secured it against the wall with straps, and Alexandra pressed the button for B1. But the elevator jolted and stopped at the first floor instead of descending. The red indicator perched on 1, but the cage lurched to a halt. A harsh metallic grind echoed. The bulb flickered. Isla's voice was tight. "It's jammed." I pressed the call button, but the speaker crackled. "Line disconnected." Silence stretched. Then, a sharp knock at the elevator door. "Cliffhanger," a voice hissed through the metal grate. "Open up, Melrose. This is Artemis Security. Step away from the painting, or we will force entry." The steel grate rattled against the elevator door as the Artemis security operative's demand echoed through the cramped cage. I pressed my back against the cold metal wall, heart hammering. Alongside me, Isla's breath was shallow, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the painting crate. Alexandra let out a low hiss. They must have blocked the call line. We're on our own. I steadied my voice. We can't let them breach this. Not now. Not after tonight. My mind raced. How to regain control. How to keep the painting safe. Isabel Vega's voice crackled in my earpiece. Team Alpha, do you copy? I tapped my finger. Copy. We're stuck in the freight elevator at the Maros Prescott exhibit. Artemis Security is trying to break in. Static, then Isabel's steady reply. Moving, hold tight. ETA, 2 minutes. 2 minutes felt like an eternity. The rattling continued, punctuated by muffled shouts through the grate. The elevator's cage sprang slightly with each new forceful jolt. The plastic covering over echoes of the heart billowed, almost like a ghostly banner. I stepped forward, peering through a small grate window. The corridor outside was dimly lit, shadowed lines stretching into darkness. One figure stood at the door, silhouetted, flanked by another holding what looked like a taser and a set of bolt cutters. Step away from the painting, the voice snarled. You have 5 seconds. 1, 2. No, I shouted, voice raw. I pressed the button for the door open. Nothing. 3, the voice taunted. Alexandra pulled out her phone. The elevator's manual release is behind the panel. She yanked at a loose plate on the wall. Panels shifted and clattered to the floor, revealing a small cylinder with a lever. But before she could reach it, the grate exploded inward with a deafening crash. Splinters of wood and metal flew as an Artemis guard shoved the cage open. Freeze, he barked, eyes locked on Isla, who shrank against the side. In that instant, the elevator jolted and lurched downward. An emergency override triggered by the breach, sending the guard and the other intruder crashing to the floor of the cage. A scream echoed as they tumbled. I lunged forward, clutching the strap of the painting crate. Down the shaft, the floor dropped out from under me. I felt weightless for a breath, then slammed back with a jolt as the cage struck the conduit intercept arm. Lights flickered. And then, everything went silent, except for the sound of my pounding heart. The cage hung at a slant, the floor one bolt half-sheared, the whole contraption groaning under the stress. The guards slid, sliding toward the broken bolt, only to scramble upright and scrape at the door. It was a standoff. Isabel, I gasped into the mic. Her voice sounded distant. We're en route. 20 seconds. I swallowed, looking between the guard and the damaged lever. The manual release was within reach, just beyond the operator's grasp if I could push the guard away. Back off, I shouted, stepping forward. The guard leveled his taser. Stay where you are, or you'll regret it. Isla sprang to her sister's side. Lydia, no! But I needed to try. The painting, my truth, couldn't be taken now. I darted left, angling toward the lever. The guard fired. The taser's prongs hit the cage frame with a metallic crack. Sparks flew. I dove under the sprinting figure, grabbing the lever. It clicked open, a hiss of air, gears releasing. The cage lurched again, grinding free from the stuck bolt. The broken guard slid back, losing footing. Before he could react, the elevator dropped another foot, rattling back toward level. The guard menaced me, stumbling, weapon raised. Isabel's voice erupted in my ear. Entry point breaching now. A chorus of feet and calls echoed from outside. I hoisted myself up, turning to the guard. With a swift kick, I sent him sprawling backward, taser clattering across the floor. The cage shuddered downward, aligning finally with the B1 floor landing. The doors crawled open, revealing half a dozen ISR agents. Isabel's team, weapons trained, first aid kits at the ready. The guard outside scrambled to his feet, shifting to attack, but Isabel's second-in-command raised a silenced pistol. Don't move. He froze, eyes wild. I released the lever, and the cage settled firmly. Isabel stepped in, shielding us. Are you okay? I breathed deeply. We are now, quote. They pried the taser from the guard's belt and cuffed him. The other Artemis operative lay moaning, dazed. Alexandra crouched beside Isla. We did it. Outside, alarms began to wail, a signal the gallery's private security had been breached. Lights flashed in the service corridor. I wrapped my arms around Isla, relief mixing with adrenaline. Then Isabel signaled. Medics are on their way. We need to get the painting to the secure vault immediately. We wheeled the crate out, passing stunned staff and the injured guards now under arrest. The elevator doors closed and hummed away to safety. As the vault doors closed behind me, I exhaled fully for the first time in hours. But my earpiece crackled. A voice, distorted, cold, whispered, "You only bought yourself time, Marrows. Plan B is live." Cliffhanger, what was Plan B? And how much danger were we truly in now that the stakes had escalated beyond anything we'd imagined? I woke in the vault's inner sanctum to the hum of the security generator and the distant clatter of guards at the doors. Dawn's cold light filtered through a sliver of high window. My body ached from the night's ordeal, but adrenaline still pulsed in my veins, refusing to let me rest. Isla lay on a nearby cot, her face pale but determined, eyes fluttering open as I sat up. "Morning," she whispered, voice husky. I offered a tired smile. "Morning." She sat, rubbing her arms. "Any sign of Plan B?" I shook my head, glancing at the wrapped painting resting on its own special rack, surrounded by infrared sensors. "No, but we got a message. It's coming." I replayed the distorted voice in my mind. "You only bought yourself time, Marrows. Plan B is live." A sense of foreboding tightened my chest. Whatever it is, we face it together. Outside, footsteps approached. The vault door slid open. Alexandra, Isabel, and my lawyer stepped in, faces drawn. "We have an update," Alexandra said, setting down a laptop. "The private security firm linked to Artemis & Company has assembled a team offshore. It appears they're planning a cyber attack on the Prescott Marrows site tomorrow evening. If they disable the security systems, they could send in a strike team to seize the painting." "Why would they resort to that?" I asked, voice tight. She sighed. "Because this isn't just about a painting anymore. It's about control, public narrative, market value. If they can recapture Echoes of the Heart and then destroy its legitimacy, they can claim I interfered illegally, tarnishing your brand and the Prescott name." My heart thundered. "So what's Plan B?" Alexandra's eyes hardened. We hit back. "We lay a plan to expose Artemis & Co.'s entire scheme, track their digital fingerprints, leak proof of their intent to buy stolen art and bribe officials. We do it publicly, on social media and in the press. We set a digital trap." Isabel leaned forward. "I can get my cybersecurity team to embed a honeypot in their bidding platform. When they log in with their credentials, we'll capture IPs, logs, and incriminate them. Then, as soon as they try to fire their next strike, we publish everything." I nodded. "Okay, let's do it." The next 12 hours were madness. Laptops open, secure lines buzzing, emails flying. We coordinated with the Prescott Estate's IT experts, traced proxy servers, planted decoy data on the auction platform. Meanwhile, I held media interviews, keeping the story alive, emphasizing the themes of artistic integrity and family betrayal. The public was invested, rallying behind me. By late afternoon, we had the trap ready. The cyber team sent an encrypted message to the firm's known email alias, an invite to an exclusive private auction for Echoes of the Heart at a digital counter-event. They couldn't resist. At 9 p.m., Marcus's proxies logged in. Instantly, the honeypot illuminated their activity. IP addresses, login times, identity traces linking to Artemis & Co.'s London headquarters. The data streamed in. Alexandra prepared the press release for midnight. Exposé: Artemis & Co.'s illicit plan to hijack Masterworks. We handed it to the press contacts in New York, London, Paris, and Berlin. The world would wake up to this. As the clock struck 12, social media erupted. Headlines, tweets, live streams. Artemis & Company scrambled to deny it. Their stock dipped. Investors called for resignations of board members. The firm's facade cracked. The vault door buzzed. Security guard's voice. "Ms. Marrows, there's someone to see you." I shared a look with Alexandra. "Who?" The guard opened the door. A man in a tailored suit stepped in, face familiar. My childhood art school mentor, Professor Eleanor Grant. But something was off. Her usually gentle face was stern, eyes filled with urgency. "Lydia," she said, voice trembling, "there's another player. One you never saw coming." Quote, cliffhanger. Who was the mysterious force backing Artemis and Company, and how deeply did their reach infiltrate the art world and my own past? My breath caught when Professor Grant entered the vault's inner room. The years melted away, her chalk-stained fingers guiding mine on canvas, her encouragement as I spilled color onto blank walls. But the vulnerability in her eyes told me this wasn't a routine visit. "Eleanor." She hesitated, glancing at the sealed painting behind me. "Lydia, there's something I never told you. About your family, about your work, about why it mattered." Her hands fisted, knuckles white. "But tonight, I found evidence that Artemis and Company is being backed by a shadow investor. Someone who's been pulling strings for decades, influencing art markets, and banking on stolen masterpieces to finance darker ambitions." My heart thundered. "Who?" She advanced, voice dropping. "A consortium tied to the Prescott Estate's old rivals, the Hartwell Group. They've been quietly amassing power, using illicit art trades to launder money and fund covert operations across Europe. Your painting, my God, it was never just a family betrayal, it's a pawn in geopolitical chess." Cold shivers raced down my spine. The Hartwell Group. I thought they were defunct. Officially, yes, but off the books. They survived, funded separatist movements, tech sabotage, even paramilitary contracts. When they learned you were collaborating with the Prescott heirs, they saw a threat to their revenue streams. I sank onto a stool. The weight of her words pressed like lead. "So they orchestrated the sale, the blackmail, the auction, all of it?" "Yes. And now that the Prescott-Hartwell feud has reignited, they're desperate to reclaim echoes of the heart, because your art is their final piece of the laundering puzzle." My legs trembled. "We have to stop them." Professor Grant nodded. "And we will, but first I need to show you something." She pulled a slim file from her satchel, flipping it open to reveal blurred photographs, bank transfers, and encrypted correspondences linking Hartwell executives to Artemis & Co.'s secret accounts. "This is damning," Alexandra whispered, bending over my shoulder. "We need immediate public disclosure, and we need to move the painting to a more secure location, perhaps the UK." Isabel added, "My team can establish a temporary hold in London's Tate Modern Archives. They have world-class security, plus we can leverage diplomatic channels." I rose, determination igniting. "Then let's move it." I met Isla's steady gaze. "Together." The operation to extract the painting began at dawn. The vault staff, under strict confidentiality, assisted while the Secret Service attached to the Prescott estate provided armored transport. My small convoy, van, 2 black SUVs, and a lead car threaded through New York's pre-dawn streets, heading for JFK. As we boarded the private jet, the painting was cradled in a reinforced crate, shielded by lead-lined walls to block scanning. The nervous hum of the engines matched my heartbeat as we took off. At 40,000 feet, I stood by the crate, my reflection rippling on the plexiglass. Professor Grant approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. "After tonight, this will be safe." Suddenly, alarms blared. Lights flashed red. The crate's internal sensors signaled a breach. Someone was trying to override the crate locks remotely. Isabel's voice crackled over the secure comm. "They've compromised the avionics. Someone's in the control room." We spilled into the narrow cabin. The pilot's voice, tense. "We've lost cabin pressure controls. Someone's tampered with the system." Isla's face went pale. "We're being hijacked." The plane jolted. Oxygen masks dropped at our feet. The Hartwell Group's reach, I realized, extended even here, into the sky. Cliffhanger. As we struggled to don masks, the cockpit door hissed open. A suited figure emerged, smirking, and in his hand, a remote control with one glowing red button labeled Release. And #X20, Lydia and her allies face a mid-air hijacking as a Hartwell operative attempts to seize their plane and the painting. The cockpit door opens to reveal a figure armed with a control device, threatening to depressurize the cabin. Chaos ensues. Oxygen masks deploy, passengers scramble, and Lydia must take charge, using her wits and alliances to negotiate with the hijacker. In the narrow jet cabin, alliances are tested, and the painting's fate hangs in balance. Meanwhile, back on the ground, Isabella Vega's cyber team races to regain control of the aircraft's systems. A tense standoff develops between family, former mentors, and enemies. In X-20, the cabin's pressurized hush shattered into a cacophony of alarms and panicked gasps. The suited operative clenched the control remote, eyes wild beneath sweat-slick hair. Outside his cabin, the sky stretched endless and indifferent. My heart pounded as I clutched the painting's crate. Professor Grant and Isla were at my sides, faces pale. The air marshal, revealed by a glint of gold on his lapel, nudged us with a whisper. "Stay low, I'll handle him." I swallowed. About 10 rows back, I could see the marshal's hand hovering near his sidearm, but limited in the narrow aisle. His maneuverability was low. The operative snarled, thumb hovering over the red button labeled Release. "Don't let this painting out of my hands," the hijacker hissed. "One press and this aircraft becomes your tomb." He edged forward, kukri in belt. Time fractured. Outside the small windows, the engine turbines whined. The PA system crackled. Isabel's voice. "We're hacking back in. 5 minutes to restore pressurization and regain control." I glanced at Isla. "When I give the signal, we move." She nodded, her eyes steeled. I stepped forward, raising my voice. "You threaten civilians over art? Look at me. Was this really worth it?" He paused, faltering. In that heartbeat, the air marshal lunged from behind, knocking the remote upward. The operative snarled, drawing his taser. But Professor Grant intervened, a textbook judo throw, sending him sprawling into the aisle. Chaos erupted. Passengers ducked, luggage tumbled. The air marshal cuffed the operative. Alarms cut out as Isabel's team regained systems. Cabin pressure stabilized with a hiss. Lights returned to normal. I exhaled, shaking. The crate stood between us, intact. As the marshal escorted the hijacker away, I pressed my forehead to the crate's glass. "We did it," I whispered, but relief felt hollow. The Hartwell Group wasn't finished. At landing, global headlines blazed. Artist survives mid-air hijacking, Merrow's masterpiece saved, and Hartwell conspiracy unraveled. The artifact would return safely, but the scope of the Hartwell network was still a gaping wound. In a UN-curated ceremony in London, the painting took its final place in the Tate's vault, under highest security. But standing under the spotlights, flanked by Alexandra, Isla, and Professor Grant, I knew this battle was over, but the war had just begun. The encrypted note glowed on my phone like a spark in darkness. "Congratulations, Ms. Merrows. Now let's discuss the next exhibit. Underscore." Who was Underscore? I stared at the lone letter, mind spiraling. The Tate's vault doors swung shut behind me, sealing safe the masterpiece and perhaps the final act of this saga. Or its prelude. 3 days later, I stood in an airy studio atop a converted warehouse in Shoreditch, London. Sunlight poured through industrial windows, illuminating easels and canvases primed with promise. Isla adjusted a tarp, ready to unveil my new work, a massive mural commissioned to commemorate the Prescott-Merrows alliance. My phone buzzed, an invitation to an exclusive gala at Hartwell's restored manor in the English countryside. The sender. _RSVP@hartwellgroup.co.uk. Mailto H. _RSVP@hartwellgroup.co.uk. The subject, a proposal of partnership. A shiver crawled up my spine. I glanced at Professor Grant, who entered carrying 2 cups of tea. "Something's come through," I said. She read over my shoulder, expression unreadable. "They know this exhibit will draw eyes. They want your allegiance, or they'll paint it as a failure." "I won't bow to them," I murmured, stepping onto the platform. The half-finished mural, a storm of cobalt and gold, reflected my turmoil. A new beginning, or another battleground? Isabel's voice chimed through my earpiece. "We've traced Underscore to Hartwell's digital signature, Harlan Smythe, their new CEO. He's rebuilding their empire, using art as political leverage." And this invite? I asked. An ultimatum, Isabel replied. Attend, or see your public image attacked. I inhaled. Then we go on our terms. We expose them in person. That evening, I donned a tailored emerald gown, its hue echoing the mural's greens. Alexandra accompanied me. Isla stayed back to finalize the Shoreditch show. The manor stood behind wrought iron gates, its facade bathed in golden floodlights. Under chandeliers in the grand hall, aristocrats and art moguls gathered, masks removed, secrets naked in their gaze. Harlan Smythe welcomed us, ice in his smile. Ms. Marrows, your reputation precedes you. I hope you'll consider my offer to lead the Hartwell Art Initiative. He gestured to displays of stolen pieces laid bare, each one orphaned from its rightful owner. I decline, I said, voice clear. His smile froze. A shame. Others might not show the same courtesy. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. Screens flickered to life. A montage of my stolen work, my family's betrayal, and footage of the hijacking, edited to cast me as an opportunist creating headlines for personal gain. Gasps echoed, cameras flashed, my chest constricted. This is why you should have accepted, Smythe intoned. But I admire your spirit, Ms. Marrows. Let's see how long it holds. Quote. He touched a concealed panel, a mechanical whir, and dozens of uniformed figures in black tactical gear emerged from hidden doors, rounding us up. My pulse spiked. They've locked down the manor? I raised my hand. I have proof of your group's illicit dealings, bank records, emails, Hartwell's offshore accounts. I'll make them public now. He laughed, pressing a button, and the screens blinked away. The tactical team advanced. I grabbed Alexandra's arm. Plan the reveal now. She nodded, tapping her watch. The doors crashed open as a flash mob of protesters. Isabel's cyber team in disguise stormed in, waving placards accusing Hartwell of corruption. Security faltered. In the chaos, Isla slipped in, mosaic of the mural in hand, each tile a QR code linking to our public exposé. Guests scanned frantically, phones lit with incriminating documents. Under a shower of data leaks and televised outrage, Smythe's empire crumbled anew. By dawn, Hartwell's name was synonymous with scandal. The manor's guests fled. I stood in the grand hall with Alexandra, Isla, and Professor Grant, battered but unbroken. We won, Isla whispered. I nodded, looking at the mural stretching across the hall, my art telling our truth. But somewhere in the rubble of Hartwell's downfall, a single private message pinged on my phone. You draw for me next, artist, or I will bury you. Signed, R. Cliffhanger, who was R, and how far would they go to stop me from telling the next chapter of my story? The morning after the Hartwell Gala, the night they tried to crush me under the weight of their entire empire, the city felt different, charged with possibility and peril. My phone screen glowed with that single menacing message. You draw for me next, artist, or I will bury you. R. The letter R. Nothing more. No context, no signature. Just a threat. And a challenge. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass of my Shoreditch studio, staring at the half-finished mural. Each stroke felt heavier today. Isla entered, her expression pale but determined. Who do you think R is? She asked quietly. I turned, rubbing my temples. I'm not sure. Could be someone from the Prescott estate, maybe a rival heir, or someone in the art market who lost too much. Or it could even be someone from my past I never saw coming. My voice tightened. But I can't waste time guessing. I need answers. Then let's find them, Isla said, pulling out her phone. I tapped into the Hartwell Network logs last night. There was a partial signature, some code buried in the metadata of their leaks. I forwarded it to your cyber team. They'll see if R shows up elsewhere. I exhaled, nodding. Okay, while they dig, I need to keep creating, on my terms. Tonight's premiere of the Shoreditch mural can't be overshadowed. We spent the next hours in a flurry. Calls to Alexandra in New York, updates from Isabel's team in Berlin and Paris, and coordination with local media to keep the focus on the mural as a symbol of artistic resilience. But my mind lingered on R, the unknown adversary lurking in the shadows. By afternoon, the cyber report pinged. R stood for Reynard Blake, a shadow broker known for pulling strings in the underground art scene. He'd lost millions when Hartwell collapsed. Now he sought revenge by recruiting artists under his thumb. He'd sent threats to several others, but they'd paid him off quietly. I refused to be his next victim. Reynard's address, an unmarked warehouse in London's industrial quarter, appeared on the screen. I closed the laptop, turning to Isla. We go tonight. By dusk, the mural's unveiling was underway. The gallery overflowed with enthusiasts, critics, and press. They applauded the sweeping colors and powerful imagery, the triumph over betrayal, the unbreakable spirit of creation. But I slipped away, accompanied by Isla and Professor Grant, towards the Thames, where the warehouse lay half-hidden under graffiti-sprayed arches and diesel fumes. A cold wind off the river cut through my jacket. We approached the rusted double doors. I pushed one. It creaked open into darkness. "Stay close," I whispered, stepping inside. The warehouse's interior was a cavern of shadows. Banks of steel shelves groaned under crates marked with cryptic symbols. In the center, a makeshift office, folding table, 2 chairs, and a single lamp illuminating a laptop and a stack of blank canvases. "He's expecting you," Isla murmured. I gripped the lamp's edge. "Show yourself, Reynard Blake." A tall figure emerged from the shadows, his face half hidden by a fedora. He tipped it back, revealing a hawkish face framed by graying temples. "Ms. Marrows," he said, voice smooth as oil, "I admire your tenacity. Most artists would have caved when I blackmailed them, but you stand tall." I set my jaw. "This ends tonight." He chuckled, stepping forward. "It might end for you, unless you agree to my terms. Create for me, commission my galleries, and I'll ensure your work flourishes worldwide. But if you refuse, well, burying an artist is a competition I seldom lose." Behind him, canvases fluttered in a breeze I couldn't feel. I glanced at the blank ones. His offer. Professor Grant moved beside me. "Lydia, he's not bluffing." Her voice was low but urgent. I stared at Reynard, fury igniting. "My art is not for sale to criminals." He smiled, but his eyes hardened. "Then you leave me no choice." He snapped his fingers. From behind the shelves, figures emerged, hired mercenaries, armed and disciplined. They blocked the exits. The room narrowed to a tunnel of fear and defiance. Isla gripped my arm. I met Reynard's gaze, unflinching. "I won't create for you," I said, "even if it costs me everything." He shrugged elegantly. "Then may the best story win." The mercenaries advanced. Cliffhanger. As the first figure moved in, a siren wailed outside. Isabel's team had found us, and this time, they brought reinforcements who weren't afraid to fight back. Under the warehouse's dim lights, the mercenaries circled, weapons raised. But then, sirens crescendoed. Isabel's backup had arrived. Local SWAT, the art crimes unit, and undercover investigators converging through the side doors. Conflict erupted. Mercenaries fired warnings, SWAT countered. Isla pressed close, and Professor Grant took cover behind crates. I seized the moment, lunging for one soldier's communication radio, and calling out, "Stand down!" The echo of commands crackled through the warehouse, and the mercenaries hesitated under the squad's floodlights. Reynard Blake smirked. "You think you've won?" He tapped the empty canvases. "Without me, you'll have no resources, no shows, no sales, no future." As SWAT escorts secured the mercenaries, I stepped forward, resolving in my heart. My art doesn't need your money or your coercion. It's its own currency. I lifted the empty canvases. "And I'll paint my story on these, about resilience, justice, and truth." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Then finish painting quickly, because I've one last surprise." He snapped his fingers, but was cut off as a handcuffed lieutenant read him his rights. Outside, Isla hugged me. "They can't touch us now." I exhaled, looking back at the blank canvases. My next chapter. Cliffhanger. As the police led Blake away, my phone buzzed. A notification that the Shoreditch mural had been defaced overnight, replaced with one single word in stenciled black: "Remember." The dawn light stretched across Shoreditch, revealing the mural's defaced surface. In place of its vibrant waves of color, one stark word stared back: "Remember." My heart twisted. The ellipsis? A promise or a threat? I stood before the scarred wall, Isla at my side, both of us silent in shock. Guests gathered for the mural's opening, critics, patrons, press, only to find the defacement. Shock rippled through them. Whispers hung in the air. Who would dare? What's the message? I raised my voice. This is my work, my story. They can't erase it, not this way. I gestured to Alexandra and Isabel, who slipped through the crowd to my side. In the gallery's indoor alcove, we regrouped. It's not random, Alexandra said. Remember, R's calling card. He knows we won. He's taunting you. Isabel pulled out her phone. I analyzed the stencil's pattern. It matches the spray used in Blake's warehouse. He sent a message. He's not done. My knees buckled. But why Shoreditch? Why here? Professor Grant, arriving breathless, spoke up. Reynard wants your next canvas to be his narrative. This defacement drags the art world's eyes back to the scandal. He's trying to reframe you as the culprit, claiming you vandalized your own work for attention. A wave of disgust swept me. Then we'll reclaim the narrative again. We'll show them the truth behind remember and paint our own answer. At that moment, the curator announced, tonight at 8 p.m., join us for an interactive live painting event. Lydia Maros responding to the defacement. We'll stream it globally. The announcement was met with applause, supporters rallying. As preparations began, I stared at the blank spaces on the mural's lower panels, my canvas for tonight. Cliffhanger. At 8 p.m., I lifted a roller tipped in neon white paint, and a hush fell over the crowd as I began to write a single word above. Remember. Who? As the projector lights danced over the crowd, I faced the great mural, now a living tapestry of defiance. The single word who glowed neon white above the deep black. Remember, the vandals had left. A hush settled over the audience of thousands watching live streams worldwide. My hand hovered over the roller, paint dripping with the weight of every stolen brushstroke. Tonight, it was not just about erasing defacement, but about asking questions too powerful to ignore. I inhaled, letting memories of betrayal, reconquest, and triumph flood my mind. Who betrayed me? Who manipulated the art world behind the scenes? Who believed they could bury my story? And who would stand with me as I revealed the truth? The roller glided across the brick, filling in the space between the words, transforming the mural into a question on every wall. Remember who? Gasps echoed. Cameras flashed. Hearts pounded. I turned to the cameras, voice strong. We remember every wrong, every right. Now tell me, do you know who you stand with? Voices rose. We stand with you. Crowds chanted in London, New York, and Paris. As the live feed cut to headlines, artists' provocative question unites millions, I felt the transformative power of art and justice converge. But in the shadows of Shoreditch, atop the highest rooftop, I spotted a solitary figure watching through binoculars, a sealable envelope in hand, marked with a single letter, R. Cliffhanger. That night, as the city buzzed with solidarity, a courier delivered the envelope to my studio. Inside lay one haunting image, a worn photograph of my childhood studio, now occupied by someone I never expected. I stood frozen in my Shoreditch studio, the worn photograph trembling in my hand. It was an image of my old workspace, pine floorboards, splattered paint, the weathered easel that had birthed my first masterpieces. But the photograph had been taken long after I'd left. In its frame, sunlit through grimy windows, stood a silhouette I knew all too well. Marcus. My breath caught. He was back in the place where I had honed my craft, resurrecting his plans in the very cradle of my creativity. And that was only the beginning. The day began like any other, emails, sketches, calls with gallery curators about our London exhibit. But beneath the routine lay a tension that I couldn't shake. I'd ignored the courier's envelope until this moment, believing that R's threats would evaporate with each public victory. Clearly, I'd underestimated the heart of betrayal. I'd been through so many battles: the siblings' sale, the blackmail, the auction raid in Manhattan, the press conference in London, The New York heist, the barn burner at the Tate, the hijacking, the showdown with Hartwell, and the war of words against Reynard Blake. Yet all of those conspirators, as dangerous and far-reaching as they were, had one thing in common. They underestimated me. Even Marcus, once my closest ally, had fallen short. But rediscovery of him in that old studio was a wake-up call. This fight wasn't just about the painting, or my reputation, or the market. It was about reclaiming my origins, the space that shaped me, and taking back every inch of my story. Isla arrived, concern etched in her eyes. I handed her the photo. "He's here," I said softly. "He never left my world." She set it down slowly. "What do we do?" I touched the edges of the photograph, tracing Marcus's silhouette. "We invite him to remember who he is, and who I am." Impromptu summit. Within hours, I arranged a private meeting at the very studio Marcus was occupying. It was time for a reckoning, a confrontation with the brother who sold me out, the man who manipulated the art world for profit, and the only person who wielded my own past against me. The studio's door hung ajar when we arrived. Sunlight slanted through broken blinds. Paint cans and brushes lay scattered. A half-finished canvas faced the wall, its image concealed. "Let's end this," I said, stepping inside. Isla, Alexandra, Professor Grant, and Isabel flanked me. Voices echoed. Marcus's familiar drawl. "Lydia, always the dramatist." He stood before the half-painted canvas, sleeve rolled up, brush in hand. His once perfect suit was streaked with color. "Weren't you finished with me?" I asked. He turned, eyes shadowed with regret and something else. Admiration. "I couldn't let you have the last word," he said. "Not until I've put my own truth on the canvas." My pulse quickened. "Your truth? You forged contracts, blackmailed me, funded hijackings. And now you paint?" He swallowed. "I've been living in your shadow. I sold your work because I needed to find my own place in the world. This painting," he swept at his canvas, "is my attempt to tell my side. The story of Marcus Merrows, lost artist, forgotten brother." I exhaled, feeling the echoes of our childhood, shared easels, collaborative sketches, long conversations about color and meaning. "Show it," I said. He stepped aside, revealing a sweeping abstract, broken lines converging into a phoenix, rising from flames of reds and oranges. At its center, a silhouette of two figures, one reaching up, one reaching down. I'd painted that silhouette in my earliest piece. My brother and me, interlocked in creation. Now he'd repainted it, fractured by betrayal, but reborn. Tears pricked my eyes. "You were my first student," Marcus whispered. "I watched you grow. I lost my way." I approached him, voice soft. "Then let's find it together." He dropped the brush, stepping forward. "Can you forgive me?" I studied his face, the lines etched by regret. "I forgave you the moment I realized how human you are." He exhaled, relief and pain entwined. Weeks later, at the grand opening of our joint exhibit, the gallery swelled with anticipation. The duo show, Shadows and Light: The Merrows Legacy, displayed our work side by side, my introspective narratives and his Phoenix series. In the center, the original echoes of the heart still pulsed with color, now a symbol of our collective resilience. Next to it hung Marcus's Phoenix, blazing with redemption. I stepped to the microphone, Isla and Marcus by my side. Art is not just paint on canvas. It's the stories we tell, of love, betrayal, redemption, and hope. Today, we stand not as adversaries, but as siblings, united in creation. Applause thundered. Cameras captured the moment. As we cut the ribbon, I felt a deep peace. Yet even as the crowd cheered, I felt a whisper in my chest. This story, like life, would continue to evolve. New challenges, new culprits, new questions, always swirling beneath the surface. But whatever came next, I knew I would face it with the same conviction I'd mustered from part one until now. Because in art, as in life, the greatest masterpiece is the journey itself. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.